everyone, as I am going further and further into understanding what the future holds for us and how we skill for the future that's coming. I'm thrilled to have with us Ratna Sheth Goenka. Ratna is the Art and Curriculum Development Director at the Podar Education Network. Prior to this, she was the head of creative expression, teaching world dance and visual art at Sanskriti in the Northeast. She has also worked in New York, having done her undergraduate degree at Denison University in biology and world dance, and then followed that up with a degree in public health at Columbia University in New York. She's worked in different capacities at Navatman, Revive, and is also a certified yoga instructor. She also commissions art pieces for individuals, really very interdisciplinary in her own approach and upbringing, and brings her collective of experiences to these classrooms and in her pursuit to develop art curriculum that's holistic and real. More importantly, on a personal note, Ratna has been a very, very dear friend. And I would say one of her primary traits is her dependability. I know I can call Ratna at 3 in the morning, and she will bring all her interdisciplinary experiences and background to solve whatever challenge or problem I might be facing. So, Ratna, thank you for your amazing zest for life, zest for learning, and more importantly, your desire to channel everything that you have done to now help other people. So, welcome to this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, terrific. Okay, so Ratna, as we think about the future and you design curriculum for young students all across the country, why think about the future? Why is it important?
So for us in designing curriculum, keeping an eye on the future is absolutely necessary because we know that Indian education is going through a major transformation. A few years ago, when the national education policy came out, that was in 1986, and the curriculum had not been changed since then. Now the NEP has come out in 2020, and finally all the curriculum is being revised and becoming current. And we realize, as we ourselves as students were going through this curriculum, how irrelevant it was in certain places. And we felt when we went to study abroad how non-current we are, and how important it is to stay with the times. Especially in a field like education, being current ourselves, and of course making sure that our students are empowered with a curriculum that is relevant to them in that day and time is absolutely essential.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, sets the context for the conversation. You're saying you almost went through an art educational curriculum that you feel was not up with the times, and now thanks to this change in policy, you're able to make changes that are relevant to the day era, the socio-economic structure that we live in today.
Yeah, I think also about the times right now are moving so fast that if you are not relevant and not current, you're left behind. And for students, it's absolutely critical that they have access to the equipment of this day and time, to the ways of thinking of this day and time, which is very critical thinking, which is very inquiry-based learning, and to conversations which are much more diverse and global. So for in our industry, being current and foreseeing the future and being 2 steps ahead of trends, in fact, is absolutely critical for us to serve a meaningful curriculum.
Okay, because you're trying to build artists for the next generation, and somebody
Absolutely.
in school today is probably going to create art 10, 12, 15 years down the line even.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, you talked about it becoming redundant, right? The curriculum and some changes coming in to keep with the times. So what are these times that we are living in? What are some of these factors and influences that you're seeing affect the future? What are the factors of change?
One of the biggest factors, of course, being technology. We have AI coming in, and how AI is going to affect art is huge. a lot of the technical part of art and art education is going to be completely taken over by AI. So that's a big trend we're adopting, or working towards managing that in our curriculums. Another big trend is sustainability and really thinking of the larger picture. So that's something we're accounting for in our curriculum. Third trend is a lot of self-inquiry and understanding, self-growth, and even developing a growth mindset. So that's the third trend that we see in our industry.
Okay, great. Okay, so tech, sustainability, and a more of a futuristic growth mindset. Let's take each one. Let's take the each one of these trends. You said there's a lot of AI coming in. How are you seeing it coming? Are you seeing this from an artist perspective, where you're saying, hey, as a creator, I am now using a lot more tools, or I see myself using a lot more tools in the future? Or you're seeing it in terms of a curriculum developer, in terms of using available AI tools to develop curriculum, or you're seeing it in the classrooms? Like where are you seeing the interplay of AI and how?
Can I comment on technology at large and not only AI, if that's
Yeah,
all
please.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So with technology at large, we're seeing it at almost all points of whether it's creation of material, whether it's delivery of the material in the classroom, and third, the content of it. So this I'm going to talk about in the art education space, and then second we can talk about as an artist itself in the field. So let me address this first part. In terms of developing the content itself, for us, technology is really, really useful in understanding what is going on in the landscape of art globally. Also, the kind of exposure we're able to give to the children in terms of whether it's sharing videos, and having teachers or studio artists come in and talk live to the children via Google Meet, for example. All of that is really, really helpful. So for us, in the ability of what we can create
Hmm.
is, we, for example, use Google Classrooms for teachers, where they access the lessons. We use a PowerPoint presentation. We do have no textbooks in art. We use a PowerPoint presentation for them to convey the information. And like I said, we have all these videos through which we can share journeys of various artists all around the world. And so for us, technology is at the heart of how we convey to such a large scale. So we're not going into the classroom and able to, you know, uh, talk personally to students, but we're able to access and make a difference and an impact to 144 schools because technology is at the center of it.
Hmm.
So really allowing us to scale technology is super important for that, for us in creation. Like I mentioned, for the teachers itself, they use these PowerPoint presentations. We're able to record very effective videos of demonstrations and the content and so forth. And we're able to train teachers very effectively. So teacher training is a massive part of really empowering the teachers to be present in the classroom. It helps us in terms of getting that material to the teachers so that they are well trained. And also, for example, in our situation, a lot of teachers have language challenges. They're not so fluent with English, but fluent with their local languages. So they depend and rely on things like Google Translate and so forth, understand the lesson well, and then are able to convey it in the classroom.
Hmm.
So technology in the classroom is really, really important. Even in our own teacher training, we, for example, just had a meeting with 221 teachers day before yesterday. We leverage technology absolutely to be able to train such a large group who then go forth into their personal workspaces and take on the skills. So that technology is really, really important there. Then in terms of the content itself, students are doing a lot of work with 3D printing in the schools. They're doing a lot of work with just understanding tools, like whether it's Illustrator and so forth. Um, Also in terms of AI, um, the curriculum that we teach allows them to think, um, I think allows them to develop imagination, critical thinking, allows them to speak and understand a visual language. So what I explain to the principals and the teachers is that in terms of AI, it will be able to do a lot of the logic-based thinking and work and so forth. But what is emotion, what is intuition, is something that can be developed through art, and through the language of art that we learn. And so, even to prompt AI, art is an amazing foundation to have. And so, at that broader level of developing the skills to be able to use AI effectively is also something that we do. So, for in art education, in technology is absolutely critical and at the heart of it. In the future also, I think a lot of the art is going to be creating NFTs, and so forth. um, a lot of technology now, if we speak from the studio artist perspective, a lot of the laborious work that they need to do can be done by technology, but they can actually focus on more the imagination side of it and the creativity side of it. So it's a really handy tool for them. So that's the pro. Again, I spoke about the exposure to various kinds of work that's happening currently in the field is immense. It's at your fingertips. And just to take a minute here to say how important exposure is, we see that while we're creating a curriculum, um, when the children are exposed to the length and breadth and depth of possibilities, we see that their level of thinking changes. So technology is giving us access to the length and breadth and depth of what's happening in this world. Um, yeah, so just going back to the studio artist part, um, it can be a very helpful tool in all forms of art. I think that's very clear, right? Whether you're a sculptor, whether you're a painter, whether you're a graphic designer, whether you're a set designer, fashion designer, whatever it is. The downside of it is that something like AI in specific is, if you tell AI, generate a picture of Mona Lisa eating an ice cream sitting on a horse, it can do that, right? And so a lot of the jobs of studio designers or graphic designers or illustrators is being taken over. So there is definitely a threat happening there for them. Also, AI is scrounging through all the past material that was created, using it without giving credit to the artists who created that material. So there is also
That element,
that element.
plagiarism.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go a little bit deeper into the one when you're saying, technology is a tool in the classroom, and it seems like it's had many positive ramifications. You talked a lot about access, you talked about visuals, you talked about just this explosion in the classroom in terms of what they're able to see, and then sort of, giving them the sense of possibility. How do you think this is going to shift in the future? What are you seeing coming? Are you seeing classrooms use AI modules and training modules in the classroom, or do you think the mode of communication between the teacher and the student will still remain a human-based instruction? Is there any thought of sort of co-botting it, putting in a machinery element, or just simply using tools like we learned in school on paper and pencil and charcoal and whatever? Do you see now elements of AI based training come into the classroom? Is that a shift you're going to see in the next 5-10 years?
Oh, definitely. I definitely see AI coming into the classroom.
Mm.
And I see it happening for other subjects a little faster than I see it happening for art. And I just say that because for art, the human experience
Mm.
of touching, of feeling, of collaborating, of intuiting, of critical thinking, all that is so at the heart of it that I don't think AI will replace that part of it. So, giving the instruction and so forth, AI will definitely take on. But the human experience of touching, feeling, and sensing,
Mm.
that I don't think AI and emoting, that part I don't think AI will take on so quickly.
Okay, but you're saying you'll see AI in the classroom.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And do
Yes.
you foresee training kids on how to use AI, like the prompt engineering you were speaking about? Do you see schools actually shifting towards teaching kids how to prompt an AI engine or an LLM to ask it to create art? Is that going to become part of art curriculum training as well? Do you see that happening?
Yes, I do.
You do see that happening,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
where it shifts from purely making the artwork to actually using an equipment or an AI model to
Yeah.
create a kind of artwork, because the sensibility still remains that of the creator, right, so to speak.
Yeah. 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 And that's why I say that the critical thinking aspect is going to stay. It's important. But the work will be done by AI.
You see that happening, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The mechanics of it will be done by the model.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So that then it sounds like it's a little tricky for curriculum and art teachers, etc., and for schools to find that balance, right? Like how
It
important is it
is.
to teach this child how to make this painting? Where when I look at it, I'm like, hey, I actually couldn't paint what's behind you, but I do have the aesthetic sensibility to tell somebody to create it. So then what is the role of the classroom? Is it, there is some merit in being able to reproduce that piece of work with my hands, but now I don't need it. So should I bother even learning it? You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah, absolutely. But that's an excellent question because in art, and that's what our curriculum really emphasizes. So, product based art versus process based art,
yes,
right?
yes, yes.
When you're prompting,
Mm,
you are getting the end product. But the
mm.
human experience that you've had to be able to make that, the process of it has not been experienced,
Sure,
right?
sure. Mm.
So, and that's what I was saying, that for art, the human experience is at the heart of art, right?
Okay.
So therefore, actually, we have, I was saying, we have very process based lessons. You're
Mm,
really taking a moment to stop, to feel, to understand, to integrate, and then move forward. So replacing that experience, I think art will lose its heart if
mm,
we don't, if we replace the actual experience of doing it.
mm, mm. Okay. So you're saying heart is at the center of art. And if you remove the heart from this whole equation, then the whole process is
Yeah.
just, it takes it
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, so something like, if you're thinking of something like art therapy, for instance, right?
Sure.
That's just completely washed out. There's no use of it. And then, I think we will be so bombarded with visuals with something like AI, and we already see that happening in the world around us, that I don't think that value may not stay as much as a creator, how I felt doing this work.
Okay, so now in this new paradigm, this new context, how are you then thinking about teaching kids, emotion, empathy, imagination, storytelling? Like, how do you make these sort of the new cornerstones of teaching art? How do you imbibe these sort of skills? Because these seem to be like now the skills of the future as well, right? Just having this empathy, heart, emotion. How do you bring this into a classroom? How do you teach this?
Yeah. So there are two ways. One is in the content, and then one is in the way the class is conducted,
Okay.
actually. So in terms of the content, I'll just give you some examples, very few. In terms of empathy, for instance, um, we have a lesson called The Many Colors of Us. And, traditionally when we grew up, and I think till date, we have a box of crayons. There's a color called peach color, and we always associate peach color with skin color, right? We have a lesson where we talk about the rich variety of skin colors that we have around us, and this is especially relevant for a country like India.
Mhm.
And we help them think about colors in terms of different kinds of food, so they can relate the color of ginger, the color of dark chocolate, the color of wheat, and so forth. And we ask them to envision a world where, what if all of us were exactly the same skin color? How would the world, and we look the same, how would the world look around you? Would it be as interesting and as rich, right?
Hmm.
And then we have a whole slide deck about the world in gray, or everybody looking the same, so they can actually visualize that. and then they create a piece of artwork where they use these beautiful shades of browns and peaches and whites and so forth. They are creating two artworks, one where all skin color is the same, and one where they have this rich burst of color happening, and compare it and talk about it.
Lovely.
So that's one where empathy. We have a lesson, for example, when we're studying the element, there are 7 elements of art we study. One of them is form, and how humans, all of us, have different forms and body types, and what is the function of it. So respecting and understanding something like that. So those are, right away creating empathy. A lot of also emotional inquiry and how we associate emotions to certain colors or shapes. So there's a whole study of color psychology, shape psychology, and so forth, and inquiry around that. So that is to do with empathy. When we talk about critical thinking, if, for example, instead of just teaching Gonda Madhubani as an art form, we talk about, let's do an inquiry where we put these two art forms together, compare and contrast them, see the similarities. How are they similar or dissimilar in purpose or in themes or in style and so forth? So right away, they are critical, they're creating this artwork, but they're also critically thinking about the purpose. So we also study something like art history, how the purpose of art has changed. A caveman used it to document perhaps a hunt that he's doing. Then it went into decorating. Then it went into documenting stories and so forth, right? Even photography is a form of art. Then it went into giving spirituality and spiritual thought a form. Art did that. Art gave spirituality a form and a color and a shape and identity, right? And then how it's going into perhaps social causes and giving messages to people, right? So we critically think about how the purpose of art has changed as well. These are ways in which we bring these kind of understandings
into the classroom. Okay, very beautiful. Thank you for illustrating that with the examples. It in addition to technology, it also seems like DEI and inclusivity is becoming another factor in your classrooms,
huge.
a
Yeah,
huge factor, huh? Because if you're
yeah,
using such examples, and you're sort of also tapping into DEI, and that before the workspace, if it comes into the classroom, then already you
absolutely.
see a fundamental shift in just the way people think about their workspaces.
Absolutely. So the respect for diversity
Mm.
is hugely at the center of the curriculum for us. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, okay. Can we touch a little bit upon the third theme? You had mentioned a little bit of sustainability. How are you seeing sustainability play out in art? Are you seeing it in what people are depicting? Are you seeing it in what materials they're using? Where is this whole sustainability theme playing out?
Yeah, again, at many levels.
Mm.
So from number one is the materials that we use to make our lessons, or are always thought through from the lens of sustainability. For example, we stopped using any sort of thermocols, we reduced the use of plastics, we recycle a lot. Um, we'll bring in used clothes and create, whether they're aprons or we have a lesson, for example, in color psychology. So understanding the color wheel and clothing, and they're actually getting these used pieces of clothing and making an outfit on their own. So instead of using something fresh, we encourage everything to be bought by from home, recycling Tetra packs and so forth. The materials we use are hugely influenced by the idea of sustainability. The content of the lesson also has lots of ideas of sustainability in it. We use, for example, grains instead of something like plastic beads and so forth, and also talk about why we're choosing to make a decision like this.
Mm. Okay.
Sorry. And also then thinking with the tools that we use. So we are also now doing research. A lot of the watercolor, acrylic color and so forth is toxic residue, honestly, going into our soil and into our planet. So really, even to the extent of sourcing biodegradable materials and paints and so forth is something that we are looking into. Tiny ways that will influence the culture of a school. So for example, currently decorating schools, giving greeting cards is a huge thing in the
Mm.
schools, right? We really say that instead of using paper that tree was required for, we asked them, replace now greeting cards with something like a small sapling or a plant saying, let's grow together. And, so that's a small way in which sustainability is really bought into the fabric of the way the school functions, minimizing decorations, thinking of more sustainable ways to make the school look attractive, and so forth.
Okay, so you're saying it's happening. It seems to be like a large shift in the classroom, in the materials, in the curriculum, in the tiniest of gestures. And
Yeah.
is there a positive uptake from the school and the students? Like what is the noise around what is happening? Is there are there questions being asked? Like what is the general uptake on what you're trying to do?
I think I think their minds are ready. They're
Ready. Okay.
ready to, yeah, take in these ideas, excited about it, very willing. Of course, I think sometimes, especially in the field of art, oh, things may not look as attractive, as they were earlier, but still, I think the gravity of the situation is understood, and therefore, principals, teachers, parents are respecting this way of thinking. They understand its value and requirement now.
Okay, okay. Is there a concern? Are there any concerns with, with AI coming in? And, you mentioned a little bit earlier that, look, it's going to come and it might take away some of the jobs. You can get that. You can prompt it to create whatever you want to create. Is that a concern you have in terms of just where artists sit in, their importance and position in the global ecosystem? Or do you think that, the AI is limited in its capacity and the art, like, between artist and machine, artist and AI, where do you see the balance of power settling in the future?
I think the balance of power will stay with the artist, although the artist will have to upskill themselves. Um I do think, you know, a different kind of talent, a, a a different kind of talent of an artist will be more relevant.
Mm.
So, as we would think once the World Wide Web came into the picture, artists, especially maybe the local artists or the folk artists. कितना बजे हमारे 2 बजे कितना बजे सॉरी वन से कितना है प्रिंसिपल्स आ गया
Okay, we can close in 2 minutes.
हमें 2 मिनट में पूरा कर
Mm.
जाए 2 मिनट हाँ हमारा हो जाए sorry I think Gaurav and the principals and all
Close in 2 minutes. Okay. So
uh,
you're saying that the artist will reign supreme as long as the artist is upskilling.
yeah, and I think the artists also they set, they're an important part of setting the culture of something, right? So for example, I'm giving you an example of, for example, toilets, right? You put toilets in a village, for example, but if there is no culture around using it, it is not used. For
Mm.
artists are people who create the culture around something, so you can't replace the artist, right? Things may become high tech, but the artist will be required to create the culture around it.
Mm. Okay. Okay. So you're seeing the importance of the artist in the future as well. The artist as an individual, the artist as an entity, the artist as a faction of society will continue to keep its position.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Okay. Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, and as we taper down and start closing this conversation, if you were to upskill for the future, you went to studied at some of the best institutions in the world, and you're developing now curriculum for some of the best schools in the world. If you had to go back to college at the university level, what would you suggest they do differently in terms of training, skilling, artists for the next generation? What should they be doing? How should they be thinking?
Mm, definitely exposure. We've talked about this a lot today. Exposure to technology more. Definitely I think more collaborative work,
Okay.
more interacting with other genres of art would be important. Again, I spoke about exposure earlier. A wider exposure, I think, is really, really critical. More self-directed inquiry, because said that you know, a individual is at the heart of art, right? Self-expression is at the heart of art. I think with a lot of other subjects like math, science, French, and so forth, that's already built around you. It already exists. Art comes from the individual. And so if there is a solid sense of individuality and an understanding of the self, then the art is much superior and more impactful. So in a university, that stress on independent work, the freedom of expression, that has to be there in a very strong way. Also to be able to, the growth mindset, able to adapt to a fast moving environment and still have your feet on the ground and see where you stand. So being rooted, being able, have a high emotional quotient, I think would have been really, really useful for being taught in a university setting. Yeah, resilience.
Resilience, high EQ, very practical in its approach, technical, digital skills. Okay, that seems to be sort of a formula for future curriculum. Last question: any new careers you're seeing emerging, in the next 5, 7, 10 years, which don't even exist around us today? If you were talking to these kids in school or college, and you say, "Hey guys, I think these might be the new emerging careers or sectors." Could be in any form of art, performing or visual or fine art, anything you see coming up?
I think a lot of AI driven art creators is something that would come up. I think more careers around digital sculpting, printing, and so forth. So I think in the future, it feels like, I think art therapy is going to take is really going to grow, because like I said, I think the human experience, the ability to touch, feel, sense, emote, all of that is going to become more, because technology is taking us away from these things. Art brings us closer into these things. So while technology grows, this aspect of art will also grow, and tech-based careers in art, I think, will be huge.
Okay, so more using more digitization, the combination of art and technology, and the
Even art therapy, that
and
side.
okay,
Yeah,
because the more time you spend with your machines, is you're going to then want to come back to playing with your hands, and then that's where.
yeah.
Okay, terrific. Okay, thank you, Ratna. This was an amazing conversation. Learned a lot from you as always, and I'm sure this will benefit many, many listeners. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. Take
Okay,
care.
thank you. Cheers.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.